How you doing, folks? Welcome back to another edition of the DadBodBible, Real Men Talk, where I get to chat to guys that I like to talk to and I find interesting, and I'm convinced that you will probably find interesting too. Today I've got a friend. He's from the combined strength group that I'm in with Andy McKenzie, James Lee. James, how are you keeping, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
I can't complain. It's a good day out here, so it's all good. Spring's on the way. So, James, Tell me, who are you for the people who don't know you?
So I'm James. I'm a strength coach and nutritionist primarily now. My background is originally in pharmacy, so I was at university in Bath studying pharmacy there, and then that's how I basically started training a lot more, getting much more interested in that side of things. Did my kind of PT course back in probably 2011 now it must have been, whilst I was completing my degree, and started coaching at the university gym there, which was like a really good environment because it was a high performance center for like British bobsleigh and like tennis association and stuff like that. So actually a really nice environment to kind of be surrounded by some extremely good and talented athletes, as well as, you know, normal people. So point of view, there was no room for egos because no matter how good you thought you were, there was always someone who could lift twice as much. But you know, through that, actually, I really enjoyed the training and actually the coaching side of things. Qualified as a pharmacist in 2013 and worked full time as a pharmacist for I think three or 4 years. Did a bit of PT on the side, and then just as a result of seeing a lot of people coming in and kind of doing the patient facing side of things, realized that I'd much rather actually have more of an impact on prevention rather than cure, I think, and felt like I could impact people a lot better from the coaching and nutrition side of things, like being that first point of contact. So I actually transitioned across into coaching and nutrition full time in 2016, I think it was, and completed my nutrition course, which was with MNU at the time. And then I've just been doing that since, dabbling in a bit of pharmacy here and there to keep my toe in, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much me from a business point of view. I currently run two companies. One is Simple Sessions Limited, which is my online coaching and nutrition company, and the other one is JL Fitness Solutions, which is just my face-to-face stuff. So they're the two things that I'm focused on at the moment.
Yeah, I watch you on Instagram and I would communicate with you quite a bit, and have to say I'm fucking well impressed with your bench press and your strength. You're deceivably strong when you're in your movements. Like I was watching your ring flies and your bench press, 48 kilo bench press is not something like, you know, that's a serious way to be moving. You're well strong.
I think that. I think it comes from a background. I've probably been training since I guess I was about 16. So what's that now? 16 years. And I moved through the stages as everyone does, you know, of initially starting jumping in training because I wanted to build self-confidence, get a bit bigger, a bit stronger. And then as soon as I went to uni, I started training a lot more with powerlifter, who's a competitive powerlifter and got a lot more into the strength side of stuff. Which is where my focus sort of lay for a while until I got quite a bad back injury playing rugby. And that's then shifted my focus again. So I think I've had quite a grounding in strength work, which has definitely carried over. I think that kind of helps.
Yeah. So what is it? What is your philosophy in training? What formed it?
Well, I think kind of as I alluded to there, it started off being purely from a self-confidence point of view and just wanting to feel a bit stronger and a bit bigger, really. I think it's quite a common thing when you're younger, right? And then obviously went to uni, carried that on, then wanted to get really strong, got into powerlifting, and yeah, to be fair, got quite strong across like, you know, squat, bench, deadlift, and things like that. I mean, I couldn't hit any of these now, but going back to when I was 22, I deadlifted 240, squatted 220, benched 180 in the gym was the most, 170 in comp.
And what were you sitting at weight-wise?
82, I think.
That's big numbers. That's a big deadlift and a big bench.
So they were doing all right, but then obviously got injured, and that kind of flipped my flipped my ethos on its head, really, I think, because you suddenly realise that once you can't tie your shoelaces at the age of 23, that there's more important things than just lifting big weights. So I tore a disc in my back, and then that basically put me out of lifting for, I don't know, 12 to 18 months while I rehabbed that. And I've basically just been building slowly back up for the last, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. And I'm now back to pretty much the levels where I was, but with intermittent pain. But I think that lesson that taught me was actually like physical freedom is probably the most important thing to focus on, and actually like be able to move really well and then have the ability to just do whatever you want whenever you want it without it being too much of an issue, if that makes sense. So
when did you join Combined Strength, and what was it made you join that? Was it your injury? You were looking for a decent coach?
So I first met Andy when I went down. I think it was, can't remember, probably a year before he started Combined Strength. I went down with lift the bar. Yeah. So Chris, I knew Chris from he was working at Bath at that time. So he organised a visit down to Andy's original gym in East Grinstead, I think it was. So I met Andy then, and then went back and did his, I think it was his body weight or core workshop a couple of years later. And then from there, really enjoyed the way he coached and the way he approached training. And he started talking about Combined Strength, and I just sort of joined straight away when that started. And that's been really good for me, to be honest. Since then, it's definitely formed a lot about how I coach and approach things from a more sensible point of view, I think.
Yeah, that's the best word. I think it's a sensible point of view. It's a more holistic version of training rather than just hitting weights. There's a method behind everything he does, and that's what I like about all these methods. In training philosophy, there's a purpose behind everything. For something, I think that's what's actually missing in the industry. Trainers who actually understand why the clients are doing it and the importance of individual programs. You can do a cookie cutter type program, but everyone's individual. Everyone has their own issues, and everyone needs their own sort of, as Andy calls them, P1s, P2s. The primary one, primary two focus of mobility and things like that. Is that how you train your clients now yourself?
Yeah, so I use a lot of elements of that method. So I think the way I tend to coach people, because I have quite a wide range of clients, ranging from like your average, people who just want to train because they really enjoy it and they want to be healthy long term, to kind of injury rehab, to your kind of weight loss, muscle gain people. So they all have slightly different focuses. But I think the key thing is probably that initial assessment and that conversation you have at the start, where you try and actually find out what their kind of end outcomes are more long term, rather than not just 6 to 12 weeks, but kind of what do you want to be able to do in 5 to 10 years time? Would it be good if you were pain free, or do you want to step on stage? Not that that's my bag, but or do you want to get really strong? Whatever it might be, and then that informs what you're actually looking for, I think. And
so
then
tell me
people.
Oh, sorry, you broke up. I thought you finished.
That's right.
Just a bit of a bad line here. What was I going to say? So where do you came from a pharmaceutical background, and you said there earlier on that you wanted to be the cure rather than prevention, and you're the first point of contact for them. Where do you see this, like, the health of this society going from a pharmaceutical point of view? And you've got a good balance between pharmaceutical knowledge and training knowledge. There obviously we do need some sort of pharmaceutical drugs, but in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the world is too reliant on them. How do you see like getting people off the pain medicine and into movement? How do you see the path to getting that happening?
So I think there's probably a few things to unpick on that front. I think definitely that from my point of view, I think prevention is always going to be better than cure. If you can avoid an issue altogether, that's definitely the route to go down, rather than having to deal with the after effects of said issue, whatever that may be. Take an injury, for example. If I could have avoided, doing my backing when I was 22, I wouldn't have had to deal with a bunch of stuff that I'm now still dealing with. I wouldn't be able to just carry on, and that goes for pick a disease and spot to insert that into there. So I think from a societal point of view, if we have could have a shift towards a more kind of active, movement focused society. Like if you take, I want to take like the kind of Asian countries which seem to do it really well, China and Japan and stuff, where you see them, they just naturally society by society move more, and you'll see old people from like young to old in their parks training and moving and doing all this stuff. And I think that's really important from both a mental health point of view and a physical health point of view. I think when it comes to do we overuse pharmaceutical drugs, I think it's important to understand why they're used in the first place. And they some depending on your condition is going to depend on whether they're an absolute requirement or whether they're like supporting you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
do you believe that doctors are too quickly prescribe drugs for everything, or do you think it's a good balance in society at the moment?
Again, I think it depends. I think in the UK it's a lot better certainly than it would be in the US, and I think that's just because there's no monetary incentives here. Like you're not allowed to get payoffs for giving opiates out or whatever it is, or particular brands, because it's all NHS kind of governed, if you like. There's a lot less of that happening. Again, not being a doctor, I'm not going to tread on toes, but I think when it comes to things like antidepressants, etc., I would suggest that they're appropriately prescribed because the mental health system is not sufficient to support the level of mental health issues we have. So in reality, like I think if the system was better to support people, there would probably be less requirement for prescription of those drugs, if that makes sense.
How do we get to that point?
Better funding and probably 10 to 20 years, I think.
It's not something that can happen overnight. I think people need to recognize that. It didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be fixed overnight, like a bad body, like a broken body. It's going to take time. What do you think the first steps are, though? Do you think we should be prescribing exercise? Because there's a culture, from my experience, there's a culture of people who almost like to hang on to the medicine, hang on to I have got fibromyalgia, I have got arthritis, I have got whatever. I can't train, I can't do it. It's like a victim culture almost, and think they keep themselves in this certain frame of mind. How do we break that? Because I'm only in my personal experience, I can see there's a lot of people who could do with exercise as opposed to drugs.
Yeah, I think a lot of it sort of stems from how language is used, I think, to a degree when you're first told you have something. And also your approach, like if you're someone I think who's willing to try and see if it makes a difference, because obviously we like to think that exercise is it is beneficial, but if you do have certain conditions, it may be that you have to it has to fluctuate a lot. You might not be able to do the exercise that you want, for example. But also, I think if you see people like again like Ben Cormack, Adam Meekins, they talk about it quite a lot. Is this language of how people are told that they've got something wrong with them, or that they're broken, or that they can't do that, rather than this is an issue. Let's try and find ways that we can improve your quality of life with this issue. So let's try and see if we can do this or we can do that, rather than what you can't do and restrict them. I think that's my take on it. And drugs have a place. They do help to relieve pain in some instances, and we know that being in chronic pain is linked to like big incidents of depression and stuff like that. So actually they can have a real use. But understanding, I think, how we can then shift that balance gradually over time to try and reduce reliance on pain meds and actually improve our lifestyles to maybe maximize the chance that we can come off them at some point.
So from your perspective then, when you started getting into fitness and you've still got the pharmaceutical background, did you notice like there was a direct correlation between like people who move more? You obviously do. Like there's people who move more are going to be requiring the pharmaceutical drugs less. So it's more of a psychological problem, isn't it? Like I suppose there's a culture in the UK, Republic of Ireland, where exercise it still isn't like the way other countries embrace it. Is it the weather? I don't know. There's something missing in the society that other countries seem to have nailed.
I do. I think a lot of that probably possibly even starts, from early age. If you look at kind of, let's take schools for example. We don't do enough physical activity, I don't think, in schools, and I think that is going to be a key factor in encouraging people to do it in later life. If you only have PE once a week and you're forced to do something you hate, the only impression you've got of exercise is that you hate it. You've not had the chance to actually explore options and things you might like. And most people will find something they like if they have enough goes at it, or they find the right group of people that they like being with that then do something. So I think that's probably a key place that things could improve in personally, is if there was more exposure to exercise from a young age, it probably would filter through. And also kind of people, you kind of, peer pressure is a big thing as well, isn't it? I think if you hang around with a group of people who like to exercise, the chances are you're probably going to fall into doing some sort of exercise. Which is why, gyms like yours are great, because someone will come in there as not being sure. They'll see a group of people who love it, and then they'll start to enjoy it more because it's a nice atmosphere, get results and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. What type of clientele do you focus on yourself?
So if I was to do a demographic, they'd probably be your 30 plus, both female and male, but people who are either just realize they need to start exercising because they've been desk bound for the last 12 years and stuff's not working quite as well as they thought, or they've suffered from so you have to carry on. They're kind of my core group of people, I suppose. They obviously have the usual, want to lose weight, want to gain muscle, but a lot of it's just people who want to feel better in themselves.
And what would be your go-to methods? Would you be barbell, kettlebell, body weight, or would you be a complete mixture from day one?
Yeah, a mixture based on the person. It depends on where I'm working as well. If you're in the commercial gym, you can't really plan anything. Walk in there, it's busy. You've got to change your plan 4 times to get what you want anyway. But I think the underlying the underlying ethos, I suppose, is that I think I want people to start from a really solid foundation of understanding how to move their body in space, getting a feel for the body, take each joint through a range of movement, understand how to move everything. So I guess a base of body weight is probably my go-to, and then building in layers of loaded movement as we go, as is appropriate.
How do you get people to buy into the body weight? Because this is something that I've always found, I still to this day I find it a bit difficult. I think people have a preconceived conception of what training is. It requires cardio machines, barbell, dumbbells. And then I come along and I go, okay, we're going to do the movement, we're going to do crawling, we're going to do rolling, we're going to do gym work, gymnastic ring work, we're going to do some kettlebells. I suppose kettlebells is now mainstream enough, but a lot of people don't understand the concept and the progress that can be made from just body weight. Even though we can see gymnasts and we know how gymnasts move and the strength of a gymnast, we still, maybe it's a pacing thing, maybe it's, because body weight takes so long and it exposes so many of your imbalances and so many of your weaknesses. But how do you get people to actually embrace the body weight journey?
I think that's a really good question. I think a difficulty that I come across is that people have an expectation that bodyweight training is easy. I think because they'll see a lot of HIIT workouts on Instagram as people jumping around, and that they think, that can't possibly be as hard as lifting 100 kilos on the bench press. And I think actually, once you show someone how to do a movement properly and give them a whole new appreciation of, let's create tension here, this is actually what a press up should be, rather than we're not just peeling ourselves off the floor every rep. It's actually a controlled, difficult movement. And combining a comparative sometimes, or actually just showing them how beneficial it can be, or how hard it can be, or how why we do it, and actually explaining the process is quite beneficial. On the flip side of that, I do think that there's always a place for, if, for example, a press is too advanced for someone, yes, you can regress it, but also they might just like to do some bench press, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's going to help the press up as long as they're taught how to do it properly.
100%.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
I actually think that's maybe something's wrong with the fitness industry now. You know, where we've got all these business marketeers who are telling you find your niche, and some people go, "Well, I just love bodyweight training, so I'm going to push everyone towards bodyweight training." And there's other trainers like, "I'm just going to be the kettlebell guy, and I'm going to forget about everything else." And I think they're actually shooting themselves in the foot, because there's if you can, like, I'd be a jack of all trades, a master of none sort of thing, where I believe the barbell's got its uses, the kettlebell's got a use, body weight, gymnastic rings, they've all got their use. And if you combine them like CrossFit, as much as I hate to say that, but the concept of CrossFit's a very, very solid one. Yeah. The application may be different, maybe wrong in my opinion, but the concept is fantastic. And I think that's what most people should be bringing themselves towards. You know, you find your weakness, focus on strengths, but you know, find your weakness and then improving them. And for a lot of people, body weight will be the weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a missing link for a lot of people in progressing long term and actually kind of maintaining stuff like joint health and things like that. But I do also think that actually, an appreciation of the fact that the load, or the way you choose to load, is just the tool for getting a result. If you want to kind of get a bigger chest, there's loads of ways you can do it. You can use any bit of kit you want to add the load. If you enjoy doing one more than the other, absolutely fine. But also understand they're all useful.
We lost you there. So
I just saying, I think having an appreciation of the fact that actually all the bits of kit are really useful, and not pigeonholing yourself into I can only take more food body weight because this is my pathway. Actually, how can we make that path smoother? Can we add in a bit of bench pressing, or can we add in a bit of, whatever? Did you get introduced to the likes of Indian clubs and mace bells through Andy, or did you do all that stuff before? No, so that was all through combined strength. Actually, I think it was McDonald who was who showed me the Indian clubs the first time, and Paul Gray when he came down.
I missed them. I missed both them sessions.
That was the first time I did the mace bells and the clubs, and I found them to be just really nice for my kind of shoulders, T-spine, back. Especially when it comes to the bodyweight stuff. Actually, it's like a precursor to like handstands. A few mace swings and my spine's so much more open. I find it just worked wonders.
Have you ever tried to do deadlift and handstands?
Probably at some point, yeah.
Try doing deadlifts before you do your handstand, and watch how it's fantastic. It's fascinating how it crosses over. A couple of heavy deadlifts, and then shake it out and do your handstand. I bet you hit a longer handstand. Don't know why. I can't tell you the reason why. I just know that it works really well. I've done it with loads of people. Just a wee tip for you.
Alex.
Deadlift and all stuff, yeah. So would you now be a fan of the Indian clubs? If you got your own set, and would you introduce them to your clients?
I have done in the past. Yeah, I've got a set of clubs, and I've got 3 maces here. So I've got a 4 and 8 and a 25 kilo mace.
That's nice.
It's hard. Oh, so hard.
What did you get
about? I bought it off someone was just selling them because they were clearing them out of their gym that they'd never used them. I tried to buy a 15 and a 25, but UPS the 15 got lost in UPS's system somewhere, so I just ended up with the 25.
That's a hard bell to use. Like that's a heavy weight.
Nice challenge, tough on the elbows though. You've got to build up slowly.
That's I think the high repetition stuff of the weight, like that joint work and just constantly doing that. When you're doing that over, people don't realize. Like I found out the hard way, because when I get into something, I get into it. I do it, and mace bells are still a big part of my training. But for the first 6 months of my mace bell, and I got excited, and it took me about 3 months to get my elbows back into a position where
so I just started off when I got that one, just doing like a few kind of pendulum swings behind, and then that'd just be once a week, and that was enough for me. And then kind of built up. But yeah, it depends. I find they're useful with the right client. For some people, I think they're quite hard to, like, unless you've got quite a good grasp of what coordination, and you pick things up quite quickly. There's quite a difficult skill to learn. And
I find using a kettlebell halo around the world is the one with, and you can actually bring the method of the mace bell, just put it in, just let them drop their hands down and then pull it through, and it just gives them a bit of, that's just my personal experience. I've just found that introducing halos for about 3-4 weeks, and then slowly bringing in the shortened handle mace bell or an Indian club happens to just bring it in perfectly. That's just my
I like that idea.
Yeah,
I'll have a go with that.
Have a go with that, will you? So when did you get a nutrition?
Sorry, when?
When did you get the nutrition? When did you do your MNU?
So I was in their first intake in 20. I think it was 2016. So I finished qualified 2017. I think that was. So that was good. That is basically certifies you to practice and get insured to practice as a nutritionist, basically, which is the important bit. So I've been doing that, since then. Both, it's massively helped my coaching, from a one-to-one basis, but also it's nice to have that as a nutrition standalone as an aside.
I tried it. I signed up, and I think 3 months in, I just realized it was for what I wanted. The level of dedication I would need to put into it, and whatever use it, it wasn't for me. I might do precision nutrition or something like that just to get a good foundation in training, but it's in depth. It's a seriously in-depth course. Like you don't. There's no hiding behind the wall. You need to know your stuff in that course.
Yeah, I think it kind of resonated quite well with me because the sort of science and clinical aspect of it is the kind of the stuff that I enjoyed. That was the bits of the pharmacy that I wanted to do more of, that I didn't get the chance to do working in a community pharmacy because I was spending most of my time checking prescriptions. So I really like that part of it.
And there's another good kind of combination, like your nutrition background and your pharmaceutical background. How much do you reckon nutrition-based education could prevent or could delay the need for pharmaceutical intervention?
Again, I think it depends what we're talking about specific condition-wise, but it definitely can in certain circumstances. I think if we can maintain an overall healthy weight, for example, if we can eat a good varied balanced diet and actually make sure we get sufficient micronutrients as well as macronutrients, etc., and we can stay the course, it's going to minimize the risk certainly of things like type 2 diabetes, your hypertension, all these kind of comorbidities you get that are associated with things like being overweight and obese, etc. So there's definitely risk reduction for sure. It's never going to eliminate the risk because a lot of those conditions come with a big genetic component. There's plenty of people who you see who are actually, you wouldn't think, they're definitely not overweight, but they have type 2 diabetes and just insulin resistance, and that's just a genetic thing that you're not going to be able to solve. So there's a balance again. I think you can massively reduce your risk and minimize it as much as you can, but at some point genetics are always going to play a part.
And what are you just a bog standard basic one in the sense like calories in, calories out, or do you go into the minutiae of hormonal response of certain foods, and how would you educate your clients to get them from point there where they are to where you need them to be?
I think again that it depends on the person who comes to you, because a lot of if people have got a lot of preconceived ideas and they've tried lots of things in the past that maybe haven't worked, or that have worked but that have worked for the reasons that not for the reasons that they think they've worked. You have to kind of unpick that carefully, I think. And we can use the research to inform our decisions and our explanations, and actually working through with someone to unpick bits and explain to them actually how things work, and you can back it up with evidence and things like that are quite important. I think understanding the basics of nutrition is probably pretty essential, and they're not really very complicated. That's kind of the easy bit. The hard bit is the practicality of selecting the right method and sticking with it and getting the result from the kind of psychological aspect and the lifestyle and behavioral aspect. That's probably the biggest challenge, I think. The fundamentals are quite straightforward.
So why do you think it is that with so much information on the internet, everything we need to know is there? Every single person in the world could quite easily get access to what they need to do. Why are we not doing it? What do you see the problem is why we're not doing it?
Because I think a good chunk of it is largely because we're quite, I want to say reactive, but we live in if we say we live in an obesogenic environment, it's so easy to get access to really high calorie meals that taste great. You can order your takeaway like at the click of your fingers. You can go down the shop. It's really easy to buy like a bag of sweets that you can polish off in 5 minutes, and it's like a third of your daily calorie allowance or whatever. So it's unbelievably easy to overeat over a long period of time. You have to be actually quite conscious to avoid doing that, I think. And then obviously from the side of things of why we don't do it. Also, we're quite reactive in our mindset. If it tastes good now, that outweighs for a lot of people the fact that over time those continued instances of taste good now actually lead you to being potentially like overweight, for example. It's really hard to see into the future and actually go, oh well, future James doesn't want to be overweight, so now James needs to not do this nice thing.
And how do you
that's a really big disconnect.
So how do you get your clients seeing this problem? What's your methods of getting them to get from there? This is how you're thinking, and we need you to think like this.
I think a lot of it, from my point of view, is kind of building habits around eating and around maybe buying food, for example, things like that. So trying to find out things they can do that they'll find, I can say, easy in inverted commas. So if you say, like, if there's one thing that you think you could change to your diet now, improve with your diet now, that you could do consistently, like every day with a 90 to 95% certainty, what would that one thing be? Let's start there, make that change, and see if we can then build off that. So that's a really effective way of doing it. And it's just, I think a lot of people, because people tend to know what they need to do. They know they need to maybe drink less alcohol or not have 4 takeouts a week. It's just actually getting them to think it through and ask them, maybe, what is it that you think you could change, or would you like to change first? And let's see what impact that has. And then if that goes, if you can do that, then we'll think about the next thing and the next thing. That tends to work quite well for some people. Other people like to just have a complete overhaul. It doesn't have to necessarily be a sustainable change to elicit your result. The key thing is that when you do elicit that result, you then have spent a bit of time building in habits that mean you don't immediately revert back to where you were before.
You said something, let me see. What was it you said? You don't have, there was suddenly, let me see if I can find it. There was a post you put up recently. I was like, it was brilliant. I can't, it's going clean off my head. You said
what it was about? I can probably tell you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I want to get the words right, but I don't want to get it wrong. I can't find it now. I've lost it. It was something, you said something, and I'll come back to me. It was very interesting. It was. But you're just, one of the points said all diets work by creating a calorie deficit at the end. I've got an issue with this. Now, I would like to talk about this because it is true. But do you not think that simplified explanation is making it too easy for people to justify eating whatever they want? As long as, like, you could eat the Big Mac meal diet and just eat 2 Big Mac meals a day and be under your calories and lose weight. But obviously you're not going to be healthy. So you don't think there's disconnect between the message sometimes and the actual application of what you should be doing?
So I think that's a really good point, and I'm kind of glad you raised that, because that is, it's an interesting thing. I think there's a huge difference, because it's really important that we understand that actually you can be really lean and really quite unhealthy at the same time. So the health and the weight loss thing they do intersect at a point, but they're also kind of two sides of a coin to a degree. I think you can be healthy and have a BMI that's over 24.5. You can be overweight and metabolically completely healthy. That's a fact that you definitely can be. But equally, you can be really lean and unhealthy. I think it depends on what you want to achieve. Like, if your short-term goal, if you want to lose 10 kilos and you want to keep eating your McDonald's, then it's a viable way of doing it, because you'll get the result and it'll keep you happy. And then over a longer period of time, we can maybe work on encouraging you to eat less McDonald's, which is going to be the more difficult of the two things, probably, if that's something that you really like. I think there should always be a focus on health, personally. But I do think that, especially if you're someone who's really used to eating a lot of like fast food, a lot of what we say in inverted commas, foods that are less likely to lead to a healthy outcome, then changing that set of habits is actually going to probably be quite difficult for you.
What's your opinion on Christ dieting? Because it's not sustainable, right? But if you get someone who's really obese, like morbidly obese, obviously the quickest way to get them out of danger would be to get the weight off them fast. So in those aspects, do you not think a Christ diet would be a way to go, or do you think it's counterintuitive to what you're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Just want your opinion.
Again, most of these answers entirely depends on the person, but it can be a very effective way of doing it. You can definitely have a period of very intense dieting, and what you'll see is a really good result. And that can lead to quite a lot of buy-in, and then you can always manipulate it later and increase calories a bit to make it a bit more comfortable, but they can still lose weight and that sort of thing. So it's definitely a viable approach for some people. Again, I think you've got to just bear in mind that the key thing is that when you do eventually come out of that period, that you don't want to go straight back to where you were at the start from a habit point of view, because all that's going to do is put you back in the same loop.
Yeah.
So yeah, you absolutely can use it. There's that fella, American guy. I think it was possibly in the 60s. He was massively overweight, and he basically just didn't eat anything for, I think it was almost a year, and he lost phenomenal amount of weight and kept it off really effectively. I think he had some like protein and vitamins or something throughout. I can't remember the exact details, but yeah, it does work for some people. Like other people might absolutely hate it and they'll fall off.
There was
actually, give up straight away.
Have you ever read Lost Connections?
I haven't, no.
It's actually Johann Hari. It's one of my favorite books. It's brilliant, but it's all about depression and society. But there's just one part of it about obesity. And what they said was they got the scientists and okay, what do we need to keep the human body, fueled? So let's take away flavors. Let's get everything. So we need protein, bump. We need these carbs. We need these fats. We need these nutrients. And he put this into this gloopy mixture, and he gave these clinically obese, morbidly obese people this drink, and they lost they lost 200, 300 pounds. You're talking like big guys, and they were brilliant. But then they came back a year later, and they noticed that the guys were bigger again. And and this is what the reason I'm getting this is because I think trainers need to realize that diet is not always just about calories in, calories out. It's about the psychology.
Massively.
A lot of these people had been raped or had been abused in some way, and one of the girls she got herself from like 400 and something pound to 160 or something, whatever it was. And what triggered her was a guy in her work asked her out on a date, and it freaked her out to the point, and she realized that thin meant attention, fat meant safety. So she actually psychologically went back to being obese.
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't think is actually focused on enough in the fitness industry, maybe because we're not psychologists and we shouldn't but I think it needs to be something that needs to be considered when you're dealing with people. Like, you can't ask them, hey, have you been abused? But you need to understand that that's why I've always got this thing about the calorie in, calorie out is not the answer. It's important to understand, but I think it's been pushed by the fitness industry because it seems it's an easy message to push continually, that I don't think it is the answer. That's my own personal opinion. Don't know about yours.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really important point, is that the calories in, calories out is just the principle and the method, a method. Calories in, calories out is a method of creating a calorie deficit, which is what you need fundamentally to lose weight. But it's just one part of a much, much bigger puzzle. And you're absolutely right. Like, people don't just end up obese because they like eating loads. There's a whole bunch of other reasons behind it. And actually unpicking that in some cases can be really difficult. And it might be something that's well out of your remit, and you might have to refer them out to someone to speak to get and work together to actually get the result. So there's so many layers on it.
It's the confidence to actually have that conversation with your client and say, listen, this is too far above my pay grade to be able to help you. I need to put you out somewhere else. But there was one thing actually I found the post I wanted, because it's the woo-woo of the nutrition world, and it's 10 of 15. You can't adjust your pH of your body with alkaline foods or acidic foods. The pH of the blood is tightly regulated by the kidneys, so you don't die. Where did this myth come from, and why is it being pushed about the pH and acidity of the body and the food?
Where it came from, I'm not entirely sure. I think again, this is going to be a bit of a reach, but I think it's something to do with things don't really like alkaline environments. I'm not sure. Like, obviously eating alkaline stuff, right? So that I'll talk about what I actually do know, rather than just guessing at stuff. But we can use alkaline things to sometimes help, like intra-gut stuff. So if we've got if we want to like reduce the acidity, for example, in our stomach to prevent reflux, sometimes we can use things like the Epsoms, the salts, and things like that, which obviously do have that effect, but they're not going to have any effect on our our systematic processes. They're not. It's not going to like alkalize your blood, for example, because we need our blood to be between like 7.35 or 7.45 pH. Otherwise, stuff doesn't really work as we need it to. That's really tightly regulated. If it goes wrong, you either get acidosis or alkalosis, and we have a problem. And if it gets really wrong,
what is acidosis and alkalosis? I have no idea.
So basically, if that mechanism goes a bit wrong and you don't regulate it, if it acidosis would mean that the pH drops below 7.35, and alkalosis would mean it goes above. So things, acidic things would be like, I think like carbon dioxide can be quite acidic. I think that's would decrease pH. So things like that can have an impact, but you're not going. But normally, you exhale, that kind of gets rid of the CO2 from your body, that kind of thing. The kidneys regulate everything else within the blood system, and what we see is actually if you do start to eat a very alkaline diet, the test people often quote is, oh well, let's just test our urine and we'll prove if it's working, because if our urine is more alkaline, then it's working. And my point in that post is actually that test proves that actually it's definitively not working, because that just shows that your kidneys are doing their job and actually getting rid of all of the alkaline stuff to keep the balance. So that's kind of the point there, is that what tends to happen with a lot of these like fad diets, like this one, for example, or the ones that say you've got to eat X thing all the time, or Y thing. What they tend to do is you'll lose weight because you'll put yourself in a calorie deficit, probably. You actually end up focusing more on eating more vegetables and things like that, which are well known for being health promoting.
Mm-hmm.
So that the effect isn't actually as a result of this magic thing you're doing. It's because of the diet as a whole has improved, probably. Is generally why you see the results you do, rather than it being the best thing ever.
And if you're losing weight, you shouldn't put butter in your coffee.
Definitely don't put butter in your coffee. Why would you do that?
Where did this come from? Was it bulletproof coffee? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, so he actually put a Twitter post up the other day saying macronutrients are dumb. And I kind of had to reply just saying, well, putting butter in your coffee is dumb. So I think the reasoning behind that is something to do with.
I fell for that when it first came out back in like 10 years ago. I was like 8 years ago. I was like, okay, everyone's talking about this. It must be true. And I tried it, and it was disgusting. I was like, why would you do this?
I'm not surprised. But just like, if you're going to have butter, just put it on some bread or something, or on your vegetables, and enjoy it. Right? Don't put it in your coffee, for God's sake.
It must be coming from a keto sort of line of thought, if not.
Yeah, I mean, I had a look into it when I posted that, and I think that was my original thought as well. I think there's some aspect of that, but there's something to do as well with the mycotoxins or something, something that's on the coffee sometimes that is supposed to prevent causing issues. Anyway, it's pointless. Certainly from a if you're using it as a method of keto, like what even then. Why would you do it? Why would you just have butter on something else?
Where did this ketogenic diet come from? This craze? Is it like, I'm not too clued up on it. From what I've read, there's literally no benefits from it, bar if you're maybe epileptic or something.
Yeah. So if you're epileptic, that's really interesting. If you've got now what is it? It's difficult to treat epilepsy, I think, where you have very recurrent episodes. I think that's where the diet originated from. Is that actually they found that if you eat the ketogenic diet, actually it can really help to control your episodes in some cases, which obviously is great if you're epileptic, but it is a really difficult thing to stick to. To actually be in ketosis and eat that few carbohydrates is quite hard to do. I think I certainly would not enjoy it. I quite like my cake and stuff. So
it doesn't make sense to me. It's these. I don't know, the fitness industry is just run crazy, the fitness, and it's just like, as soon as a PT jumps into it, it's just like someone like James Smith not that he does, but just say if he said ketogenics the way to go, all of a sudden you're going to have all his PT fanboys jumping on board, and then you get this bullshit pseudoscience woo-woo crap that permeates through the entire industry, and it's just all these misinformation comes through, and it's maybe one of the reasons why the fitness industry needs to be more regulated, because it does leave it open to bullshit.
Yeah, I do think that this is where actually taking some time to kind of understand your first principles is quite important. So, like any diet is essentially a method of creating this deficit, right? So keto, that's how keto works. People often feel better on keto, but actually perform less well, things like that. So if you understand, like, if you enjoy eating keto as well, by the way, like, do it. If it feels great for you and you love it and it works, like, there's nothing wrong with that, like, necessarily. But just understand that it's not the best way for everyone. Like, it might be the best way for you, but it's probably not the best way for me. It's definitely not the best way for me. It probably isn't the best way for you.
No.
We probably would have different ways that work for us, and that's fine. Just understand.
I'm too stone overweight at the moment.
but that's it. But then in that case, you've got to find a way that does work, and that could be, whatever method works that fits those principles. Ultimately, is going to be the one that works.
Well, one thing that I'm very good at, and is like just accepting my situation. Right now I'm fat, I'm overweight, I'm carrying way too much weight than I'm happy about, but I'll lose it. But I don't get stuck into the fact that I'm fat, I'm a failure. I just tell everyone I'm fat, so what? Who cares? I'm still happy and confident. They see the guy I am today, like 2 stone overweight. I'm going to be as confident and have as much self-belief in myself as the guy who's 2 stone lighter. It's. I think that's a crucial part for people. I think people put too much emphasis on themselves. Like, when I lose this weight, I will be. No, you won't.
Yeah.
You'll be the same person unless you focus on the problems that are really holding you back. And I think there's too much of a focus on diet. When I lose the weight, I'll be happier. How do you get around that with your clients? Because it's something that I have to deal with on a daily basis with mine.
I think the question to ask is why do they think that will make them happier? Like, is that what aspect of being thinner is it that will make them happier? Like, is it the fact that they think they'll feel more confident being in their clothes or whatever? If so, that, again, obviously that's absolutely fine, but it's the confidence that they want, and is the only way to get that through being thinner, or is getting stronger actually what you want, or is getting down to the bottom of, like, the why is probably the most important thing, I think. Again, it's one of those things where, like, people tend to go, I want to get a 6-pack, and it's like, okay, great, that's an absolutely fine goal to have, but do you understand that might actually mean that you're going to feel really bad for, like, several weeks because you have to get really lean? Like, is it really worth it? Would you rather be able to go out for a beer with your mates and go for a meal and a few beers once a week, or would you rather would you rather be shredded? Pick one, but what will make you happier?
I think there's a definite disconnect between fitness and health. I don't think people realize there's such a difference. You can be fit, but you're not going to be healthy. In fact, I would say when, like, fighters and sports stars are at their peak, they're probably not at their healthiest. They're probably carrying a wee bit too less body fat, or they've probably pushed their bodies that wee bit too far for a specific goal. But we think to ourselves, look at the shape of them guys. That was what ultimate health is. Therefore, that is what I need to achieve to be healthy.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. That's what ultimate performance is, isn't it? And I think to be doing that is one thing, but also you've got to remember that is, they devote their life to that. Most people, you don't have the time. You probably don't really want to. It might sound like a great idea, but actually, you probably don't actually really want to be in their shoes and have to get up every morning early and do 2 or 3 training sessions a day. And whatever else it is.
There's a reason why they're elite.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think, again, it's like, as soon as you go to that, across the threshold of, like, to sport and competition, the goalposts shift a little bit away from health to focus on performance. And it's not to say you can't be healthy and perform really well, but it skews you to one more side, because some things tend to give at the expense of performing at your peak. I think.
Yeah. What about the I suppose it is a craze now, and I think people are jumping on it because they're like leftist liberals now. But the vegan culture that we've just, like there's militant vegans. Like I don't mind you being vegan for if you think it's going to be healthy for you, or if you believe, morally that it's wrong. But I do have a problem when you try to shove it down my throat. But from a health point of view, like what the health that show, do you think veganism is the way forward, or do you think a more balanced option with meat and fish, poultry is a better choice?
So I think you absolutely can be very healthy eating a vegan or vegetarian diet. Arguably, it's a little bit more difficult, actually, I think, because you have to be much more aware of where you get all of your sources of nutrition from. Because, I could eat Oreos all the time and now be vegan, but I'm not going to be healthy.
That's a good vegan diet. I like that.
But so you absolutely can be healthy, but equally, you can be really healthy in an omnivorous diet. It's a bit easier because, it's easy to get all of your nutrition eating omnivorously. I think as far as I'm aware, the research currently doesn't show any significant difference between you're going to be as healthy eating omnivorously or vegan or vegetarian, provided that you're meeting all of your nutritional requirements. There's no benefits, massive benefits either way, really, if you do it right. I understand the ethical side of things, like absolutely. I'm all for animal welfare, but at the same time,
I agree with the vegans that end. Like I do think we're over consuming meat just to sake of over. Like when you look at the amount of food that is just dumped out on a daily basis, the amount of meat, like you buy meat and you just end up throwing it out because you don't use it. It's like this overconsumption culture we have that we just buy. We don't actually buy what we need. We buy what we want, and it's become like a habit to buy stuff and then we dump it out. And I think, like if we could maybe look at ourselves and ask ourselves where are we going wrong, we could definitely help the moral side of things, the ethical side of things.
Yeah.
But as far as health goes and practicality, I think a lot of vegans are putting themselves in a position of like they're not in a better position than people who are omnivore. It's a harder life to live, and it almost makes them miserable. I think like a lot of vegans are not happy people.
I think there's a lot of sides to it, aren't there? There's the side that actually, a lot of people who are vegan and vegetarian tend to be a bit more health seeking by nature than a lot of omnivores, which obviously plays a part, doesn't it? Quite a big part.
Again, when it addresses that bit, it's not just the simple fact that they're vegan. It's the fact the reason why they're vegan is because they are so into looking after their bodies. So even if they're eating meat, they're probably going to be healthier than most omnivores anyway.
And that is quite a big point, actually. Like if you're, if you take two people who are, equivalently active and are both eating equivalent diet, one omnivorous and one vegan, the health benefits are not going to be massively outweighed either way. So it would seem currently. I think, again, from the ethical point of view, I agree with a lot of the points. I do think things like animal cruelty and stuff need to be minimized as much as possible. Personally, again, I don't agree with people saying you have to eat like this. Like, give me some decisions and I'll make my own informed choice based on that. Sure. That's one side, but that goes for either extreme, right? I think just doing a carnivore diet is dumb, and just being militant about that is just as bad. So I think we can be balanced about it and then make our choices based off that, and you decide what you ethically want to do, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Where did this carnivore diet come from? This is madness. Like, does it have any benefits? Because I'm reading some articles saying that their children were cured of something or something like that because they had. I can't understand it. It sounds like a great diet to me, but I don't think I could do it.
No, I mean, honestly, I've not looked into it in that much detail, so I'd have to say I'm not really sure on that front. I'll happily look into it in a bit more detail. It's just I can't see. I mean, I can't see it being better. Certainly, I can see it being really expensive.
Yeah,
but I can't see it being better.
It's going to be a fucking ordeal.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly well established, I'd say, that actually eating plants is good for you.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we need to really give it too much credence, to be honest.
And so tell me this, because so this will be a topic that you might be able to talk to me, you might not be able to. Don't want you to delve into something you're not too sure of. TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. What do you know about it? Because there's a lot of guys talking to me about it.
In what sense? From what angle?
And what exactly is it? What does it do for them? What is it? Because the guys are talking to me, and I never want to really talk to guys about testosterone replacement therapy because I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to start advising people to take things. But I do know that in this country, it's very, very hard to get any type of treatment compared to somewhere like America. And that's why the American men in their 40s and 50s who train are so much more buff than the Belfast guy. And that's why we look at them going, bastards. But do you know what the benefits are? Do you know the protocols behind it, or any? What's your?
I can shed a bit of light on it, but I'm going to preface all of this by saying if you do think you have an issue with low testosterone, you need to go see a doctor and an endocrinologist who will then do the relevant tests and stuff to see if you actually do have significantly lower testosterone than would be expected for a person of your age, for example, or if you've been tested before. And that's when I think here they've got very rigid criteria for what would constitute like hypogonadism, which is what would be the reason for prescribing it. And I'll talk a bit about the basics of that, I suppose. So that's the way you would go and get it here. I don't know how it works in America. I'm not sure if you just go to your doctor and be like, I want some testosterone, I want to get bigger, and they just give you it. But
it's not hard to get in America at all.
But certainly, from this side of things, I would only probably, again, it depends on your take probably on whether being enhanced is fine or not. But from a purely health point of view, that's the route you need to go down if you think you've got issues, I think. And what we're aiming to do is basically we'd be aiming to bring our testosterone levels up to what they should, in inverted commas, be at that point in our lives. So, it's perfectly natural for, as we get older, our testosterone levels to drop. And having a bit of a look when you mentioned it, they naturally drop by somewhere between around about 2% a year. I think it is from the age of like 30 to 40. So that is what you'd expect to be like a natural decline. So anything more than that, maybe we start to see some issues. You might have heard it termed like male menopause or whatever. But what essentially is if you have significantly lower testosterone, we see things like mood swings, erectile dysfunction, potentially osteoporosis. You get the gynecomastia, like the man boob thing. You lose muscle mass, irritability, things like that, insomnia. So these can be like the side effects of having low testosterone. Obviously, it can be caused not just from natural things, so like some drugs can cause it. Where they've got a couple of with primary and secondary hypogonadism. So primary is a problem with your balls, basically. So like more of a genetic thing, like Klinefelter syndrome, if you've heard of that, where you've got like your XXY rather than just. So you've got an extra X chromosome.
Okay.
It chucked in the mix, and that kind of causes problems in that sense from like a testosterone production. If you catch mumps as a kid, that's what can affect your testosterone production. So that could be quite bad for like fertility and stuff like that. Obviously, like if you injure yourself, chemotherapy, if you have cancer, stuff like that. So that can all affect it from that side of things. And then we've got like the hypothalamic pituitary side of things, which is tended to be where the aging comes in, and like the obesity can have an impact. Opioids can actually have an impact on that. HIV, TB, things like that can also have an impact. So there's several things that can kind of chuck it out of whack, I suppose. And if and again, obesity and type 2 diabetes, probably for more your age group of people who you're talking about, like your kind of 30, 40 plus men, are the ones that are going to be the biggest.
I'd say if we've done a test, I'm sure they've done tests, I'm not too sure, but I'm sure they've noticed a steady decline in the levels of testosterone men over the generations. Our nutrition, our movement, like exercise. We know exercise can boost testosterone levels. We know nutrition will have an effect on testosterone levels. Stress probably has an effect on testosterone levels to some extent. And there's three things we're looking at in today's society that's prevalent: diet, lack of exercise, stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're wondering why guys are carrying weight, they've got man boobs, and they're feeling not like a man anymore.
So you've hit the nail on the head with the three things. So actually, the three things I've written down. Stress is a big one. Obviously, exercise and how well you're training and feeling. Depression and anxiety could be other triggers as well. So, especially at the moment, they're all massive factors, aren't they?
Low testosterone can result in depression and anxiety, can it?
I would imagine so. There's normally an interplay between the two. Either way,
it would just be something that I would think it'd be worth exploring for some scientists, because the level of depression and level of anxiety in society today, and what would be the correlation between drops in testosterone levels, because it is something I think coaching guys in the 40s and 50s, it's something that I notice, lots of guys are walking in with the bellies, with the man boobs, not feeling very manly. And, and like, I notice that if you get those three things sorted, like sleep is massive. Get them to get sleep, get them to get nutrition, get them lifting weights and losing that weight. And all of a sudden you can see changes to become more of a man again. And I think that's for a lot of guys. Well, I coach men specifically, but that is what they're looking for in training. They want to feel like a man again. And maybe in society we're being pushed towards a more feminized society as opposed to a masculine society, toxic masculinity and all. But there is definitely an element of guys with low testosterone levels in society, and it's affecting us massively. It's something I need to get. Do you know anyone who I could talk to about that, by the way, by any chance?
You could probably have a word with on Instagram. Spencer Nadolski is an endocrinologist, I believe.
Write him down, Spencer.
He's quite. He's probably a good person to drop a message to. I think he's quite active on there, so he might have some input. But he's an American fella. But I think you're right in that front of actually with regards to this TRT thing. That would be my last kind of approach. I think would be going down the route of drugs, and this kind of circles back to what you were talking about at the start. Actually, it's one of those things that you can actually have probably. If lifestyle factors are a big part of why that's happened, then by improving your lifestyle, you could definitely have a positive impact on that, I would have thought.
Well, it's easier to get stripped injection, isn't it? That's the word. That's where we're living in. We're living in a world where it's just we want things fast. We don't want to actually do the struggle. And the thing is, if you actually realize that you've got low test levels, or you've possibly got low testosterone levels, and you're not sleeping right, you're stressed, you're not training, you're not eating right, why would you not embrace those moments? Because it's going through that journey that's going to help you become the man you're looking to become in the first place. And injection is just a simple, you're not really changing yourself as a person doing that. You're just injecting something. I think people don't really put enough emphasis on the importance of the journey.
Yeah, and I do think that this is something that, again, coming back round kind of full circle to what you were saying earlier about the pharmaceutical drugs, especially when you see people who are coming in with things like type 2 diabetes and stuff like that, who are also, concurrently overweight and probably have a couple of other things. There doesn't seem to be, and this is a massive generalization, but there doesn't seem to be quite such an intent to improve lifestyle as there probably could be, which leads to people just expecting the drugs to do the work, and they will, but actually you're not going to help the process slow down, certainly, by not paying attention to those sorts of things, and then the route tends to get worse from there. But you have some degree of control over that.
I'm starting to go down the route. I'm going to do a podcast on it just to be devil's advocate. Not going to advocate either way, but I think there's an argument that not straight away, but maybe down the line, that see if you're obese or you're a smoker or you're a heavy drinker and you're not taking steps towards fixing them yourself, things that you can do, I don't think you should be allowed treatment in the NHS. I'm starting to get that point, because I think that like this COVID incident, look at the stress in the NHS, this pressure. I think it's like 30% of the thing is obesity. There's so much preventative measures can be taken, and they're not being, because it's free. Here, I'll get it from the doctor. There's
not. I mean, there probably is a valid argument to say, especially on the side of things like vaccinations, for example, where a lot of them are given for free on the NHS, especially your basic ones. And if you choose not to have them and then get the condition, I wouldn't be opposed to saying, well, then you've got to pay for your treatment because you've been given the option to avoid it. you chose not to take that. Now you've got it, so you've got to pay for the treatment. I think that would be fair, personally.
You know what? You know my point on the new vaccine, but but if I got COVID, I'll accept that. Because I'm not going to take the vaccine myself, but that's my choice, and that's fine. But I also think that has to be applied to then. If you're obese and you've been given the help, you've been offered help, and you're still not doing the work yourself, you're relying on the medicine, you're relying on people to give you handouts to get all this done, and you're not actually willing to put some skin in the game, and then you're looking when it comes to the point you're in hospital treatment. Well, then, if I think there's a valid argument for that as well. Then you don't deserve the treatment.
I think there's a degree of that. There's also, obviously, as we spoke about earlier, it's a very complicated condition, isn't it?
100%. No, I'm not like the clip like I said. But there needs to be a pathway. Here we're going to offer you mental, like psychological help. Let's get you through that barrier. We're going to offer you dietary advice. Let's get you through this. Show you what to do. But ultimately, it takes the person to do the work to get the results, and maybe it's the culture we live in, where we expect everything just to come to us and just that's it. Look at Instagram, look at Facebook. They've got that. Why have they got it and I can't get it? It's that sort of comparison culture. But yeah, I'm going to do a podcast on it. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to get maybe two people on, one proponent, one not, and see where the argument goes. I think
it's a really difficult thing to talk about, I think, because there's so many layers to it.
Yeah, that's why I want
it. And there's so many scenarios in which you'd agree with one side and not the other, and vice versa. I think, like I have conversations with people quite a lot about things like this, and depending on the kind of preface of the conversation, it will decide on what your kind of opinions are on it. I think so. It's a really complicated issue, which is probably why no one's talked about it. To be honest.
But listen, do you know what's even more complicated? Closing down an entire country because the NHS is overrun. That's more complicated than actually having an uncomfortable conversation and maybe calling some people. Their circumstances relate that they need the free treatment, but there will be others out there that are just bone-eyed lazy. I'm sorry there are people out there bone-eyed lazy and want everything for free, and I don't think those people should be entitled to the hospital treatment for obesity problems if they're choosing to eat takeaways 5 days a week, if they're choosing to guzzle down 2 liters of Coke a day. They're decisions you're making yourself. And I think we're in a society today where cancel culture and virtue signaling that it's preventing like important conversations, uncomfortable conversations, but conversations that need to be had, because with conversation comes the discussion and the solution. I think
that's probably that's probably one of the key points, is that we need to have a platform for discussion that doesn't just descend into like everyone getting offended.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to have that before anything is going to progress, because you there's going to be discussions about it, and you need to say, I think you do need to say within the scope of this is a generalization that X or Y, but it's probably going to annoy some people, but you're not saying it for that purpose. You're saying it to actually like get the response and make people think a little bit. And I think it's quite a different approach.
2020 has really changed people's ability to have critical thinking conversations. Like you know what I mean. So my personal opinion on these things, but like I get annoyed sometimes, but I never fall out with anyone over it, because it's people's opinion. And like some of the big arguments I've had on social media about this COVID thing has resulted in me changing my mind or maybe taking a different outlook on something, but it required that conversation to get me that way, and it required me to argue back and fight. But then, like you've said quite a few things to me, and I've went, okay, maybe that's not what I was thinking. Maybe that's a different way of looking at it, and that then puts you on a different path to a solution or a different way of thought. And ultimately, if we take the COVID thing, this is a fear-based thing. Everyone's reacting a certain way from fear. Some are fear of control of the government, others are fear of dying from COVID, and there's like blinkers on. We can't get past that. And I think that's the problem with social media and the texting, the commenting sections. It can be misconstrued what you're saying. People can read it in a different tonality, the way it's meant to be said, and it descends into like fights and arguments where no one gets anywhere. How do we get past that?
That's a tricky one. I don't know. I think you've got to understand that there's no nuances on social media. There's no room for nuances there.
No.
Everyone reads it as it's A or B, and actually, it's like with the stuff I post about the weight loss thing that we spoke about earlier. It's like, obviously in the scope of that post, that's the only thing I'm speaking about. But obviously, it's a much bigger picture than that.
Yeah.
Like, you could pick up and go, but that's not the only thing. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I can't talk about 50 things in one post. And people just got to understand that there's always context to things, and the context is really, really important.
I think it goes back to people being trauma. Like if you're an obese person and you've tried and you failed and you feel almost victimized, you're going to internalize that someone's talking about calorie deficit. It's that simple: calories in, calories out. You can be so traumatized and so sick of it that just go, you don't understand, and just blow up and attack that one person when the person is actually what you said is correct. Calories in, calories out is the crux of all weight loss, but there's obviously hidden meanings behind it. But I think social media is just the damage, and I think social media is actually causing a lot of damage towards people's health more than actually fixing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's a necessary evil, I think, in some cases. But I do think I personally just wish people would be more willing to just ask questions rather than just make statements.
I suppose it's a tool, isn't it? And like a hammer can be used for nails, or a hammer can be used for killing someone. It can hang a picture up, make the room look nice, or it can end someone's life. And
I always say this on podcasts and stuff. It's like, if anyone's, if you're listening and you disagree with what I say, or you want to ask questions, like, crack on, ask me. Come drop me a message and I'll happily discuss it with you. Like, if you think I'm wrong, fine. We can talk about it. I might be, science does evolve. So let's talk. But I think you need an open. Sorry?
That's the way it should be. Okay, yeah, I'm wrong. Hey, I'm wrong. I apologize. I got it wrong there. Thanks for correcting me. There we go. It's sorted. Why do we need to get the saying into this? You're a dick. No, you're a dick. No, I'll hit you. It's like, Jesus, I'm guilty of it. Like, sometimes I end up losing the plot and just going nuts. Fuck. And just getting angry because I've had a bad day. And I suppose that's the thing about social media. We don't know the person behind the screen, what type of day he's had, what he's going through. And that your post could just be his way of venting and just getting angry. And you just don't, and then saying,
and also it's an ego thing, right? Like, you never want to be wrong.
I'm never wrong. I don't know.
Exactly. So that's the other side of the coin. Is it's really hard to check that when you see something that just like triggers you straight away.
How do you find, talking from a pharmaceutical background who understands vaccinations a lot more and scientific, how do you find people like me who are just like, fuck that? how do you deal with that? What do you?
But it's difficult because as long as it remains a choice, it's always going to be your choice, right? Like, like the stuff I posted when you've made some of your Facebook posts, I'll put my thoughts on there, and it's up to you to do with what you will. Like, and most of the time you're like, okay, I haven't thought about that, or I don't agree because X, Y, Z, and we have a chat about it, and that's fine. I have my stance based on what I think is the right thing to do, based on the science that I know about, again, and all of these things. And I think it's difficult because you can go down a rabbit hole with everything, right? And you're always going to say, oh, but we don't know the full story because of the media, or because of the government, or because of the scientists, or because of it's being paid for by X, Y, and Z. And I think it depends on, again, your perspective and your context, doesn't it, as to what your thoughts are going to be, who you talk to. I'm from a background of people who deal with vaccines a lot, or talk about that side of the science and kind of believe in that aspect more so than maybe other people are. And that's fine. That's just a difference in background. I think some of the points that are made on against it, some of the points have a basis in some validity, but it's about just disseminating that and taking the bits from it that are actually relevant. And at the end of the day, time will tell, right?
Find a balance and just let us all live our own lives.
On the basis of the research, it's all down to what you perceive as your acceptable level of risk, I think. And obviously, we understand from a governmental level that's very different to what it's going to be for yourself or for myself.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at things from a totally different scale. They've got different information that we've got. It'd be reasonable to expect that they know a lot more than we do, because they've got the resources to find out about it. Then what they do with it is their choice.
Yeah,
But
we're looking from our own wee world, aren't we?
Yeah, it's you've got to just be prepared to talk about it, I think, and you can come to your own conclusions. And if you decide not to get it, that's up to you. And I'm not going to. I wouldn't question you either way. But
I'll fall out with it over it.
Well, exactly.
There's no point. Well, James, we'll leave it there, mate. That was a really good talk. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem. It was enjoyable. Thank you.
Yes, I'll speak to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, happy to.